Damsel. Roman groaned into his pillow. He was a complete mess. In a pleasant way, but still a mess. What had he been thinking? It was bad enough Virgil knew exactly what was going on once he pointed out to him that he'd saved him, but then he couldn't even be cute about it? Where did he get the idea to try and play it cool and aloof? Virgil wouldn't buy that. It wasn't even the first time this happened with him. Okay, better start from the beginning. When Thomas started having crushes, Roman fawned over every guy who was kind to him. And when he noticed one going out of his way to be nice to him, he pleaded with the others to go and confess their love for him. It was on one such occasion that it happened for the first time. Logan was the one to notice that he was about to slam his erratically moving hand into a wall and alerted him of this danger. Roman stopped moving and looked at his hand and the wall in question, slowly realizing the studious side was right. When he turned back to him to offer him a sheepish thank you, his breath caught in his throat and his heart skipped a beat. It was like he saw his friend for the first time, or with new eyes at least. It was like all his best qualities were highlighted, outshining the things he'd normally criticize him for. His clothes were indeed plain, but they were also stylish and sharp. Logan asked if he was alright, and Roman had to make his escape with a flimsy excuse. He just noticed how calm and soothing Logan's voice was. When he finally made his way back down for dinner, Logan was talking at length about what Thomas learned that day. Normally, Roman would quickly grow frustrated at how fast Logan was going and not being able to get it right away. This time, however, he sat down and listened with a smile, asking questions about the stuff he didn't quite understand. There was something cute about Logan when he was talking about things he found interesting. And when Roman asked questions, his face lit up for but a moment before he got himself under control again and started explaining himself more. Roman still didn't really get everything, but he still liked to listen to him talk. The next day he was determined to confess, if for no other reason than to get it out in the open. But in his nervous excitement he tripped and got pulled back by Patton, who left him with a cheesy joke and a wink, not knowing the havoc he just wrought on Roman's heart. Over the next few hours, Roman noticed that his crush on Logan had started fading and that he now saw Patton through rose glasses. His humor was a bit childish, but also endearing. He was overly helpful, and sure, sometimes that was not wanted or needed, but it was very sweet. And so it went back and forth and back again, until one day Logan and Patton confronted him about it, and he was left with no choice but to explain his feelings. He wasn't stupid. He had noticed a pattern. Every time either of his friends kept him from getting hurt in even the smallest of ways, he fell head over heels for them. The feelings usually faded after a while, but while he was pining, he was a mess around them. Sometimes he got a crush at breakfast and was over it by lunch. Sometimes he was still crushing on one and got an additional crush on the other. He couldn't help it. Luckily, Pat and Lo were very understanding and assured him that he didn't need to hide from them unless that made him feel more comfortable. So Roman got in the habit of flirting with his friends, hoping that that would make it less awkward when he did it while actually pining. It seemed to work. When Remus found out, though, he found it hilarious to try and test how badly he could make Roman crush on the others by booby traps. That was frustrating and embarrassing enough, but when he involved deceit in a scheme, that is when things really went crazy. Remus thought it would be funny to make Roman fall in love with someone who would sooner push him off the stairs than catch him if he fell. That was how Roman learned that he had to believe there was a genuine act of chivalry involved before he fell for someone. He'd made a passionate speech about how revolting their behavior was as soon as he wrestled himself out of Deceit's arms and made a dramatic turn for an equally dramatic exit. But he sprung another one of his brother's traps and fell, straight into the arms of Anxiety, who'd come to see what the shouting was about. And then he was in warm, protective arms, head laid against his chest with a heart that raced as much as his own. He looked up in the unusually unguarded face of Anxiety, his face full of confusion and concern, his voice laced with the same concern when he asked him what was going on, if he was all right. Then his expression closed off and he went stiff around him, But he didn't let go until he was sure Roman wouldn't fall over again, and that drove the prince's heart wild. Roman's heart was soaring, and his stomach was in his shoes at the same time. He felt tears of embarrassment well up and sank into his room. He threw himself on his bed and started sobbing. This was the first time a crush left him miserable. He was such an idiot. Now he was in love with anxiety. The side who thought he was stupid and ridiculous, and when Remus told him his version of what was going on, he would think that he was weird to boot. And he was so confused right now. He didn't like anxiety normally, but now he couldn't stop thinking about that moment of vulnerability. Was it always there? And even when he was his usual self. He was kinda cool and mysterious, and that smirk was kinda attractive. What was he supposed to do now? A knock on his door. Princey? Roman shut up. Anxiety. He fixed his hair frantically. He probably looked very unattractive right now. God, what was he going to say to him? Did he want to say anything? You don't have to open up. I just wanted to tell you that I talked to Pat and Lo about what happened. I'd never take Dee or Mrs. word for it. Roman let out a sigh of relief. Thank heavens! Anxiety might not think he was a total weirdo if the specs explained it to him. And I want you to know that I don't think it's weird or whatever you are thinking right now, okay? I'll give you your space until you feel like yourself again. But I wanted to make sure you weren't, like, going nuts about why I'm not around the whole time, okay? Roman leaned his head against the door. Anxiety was always nervous, but he'd never been able to tell by his voice. He'd known because that was his thing, but when he spoke he sounded annoyed at most. Now he definitely sounded nervous, and it was adorable. But it also made him want to rub him in his arms and soothe him. God, he really had it bad. I know you don't think much of me. Well, that wasn't true today. But playing with people's feelings is not cool. I'll get that through Dee and Rem's head somehow. So, yeah, until you feel better, I'm gonna give you the space you need. I'm not avoiding you. I'm kinda trying not to be a jerk about this thing. So, feel better, I guess? And then he was gone. Not realizing Roman just fell a little harder. It took him a good few days to get over it that time, and after that anxiety started spending more time in their part of the mind, which led to Roman getting crushes on him fairly regularly. And every time anxiety gave him the time and space he needed to the best of his ability. Which brought Roman back with his head in his pillow, fretting over his crush on Virgil. What was he supposed to do now? Could he just walk up to Virgil and start acting the way he did with Pat and Lo? He didn't want Virgil to avoid him, that's for sure. A knock pulled him out of his thoughts. Princey? Roman's heart leapt and all worries and caution were left behind. He was here and there was no real reason for Roman to keep a distance. He threw the door open and every word he thought of on the way died in his throat as he gazed down upon his current beloved. Gosh, she looked so amazing right now. He was all cute and nervous-like. Okay, so I wanted to ask you, since, this is your thing, what do you usually do with the others when you have that, Virgil made a vague gesture, stuff going on? Because I know it took you a week to stop being all starry-eyed after I kept you from falling off the stage that one time, and this seems more intense. And if I'm one of you guys now, then our usual thing is going to be impractical. What am I saying? I probably sound super arrogant and creepy right now, and Roman did not approve of the turn this took. His loves were supposed to feel special and treasured. That was the best part about having his heart sing for them, to share with them all the wonderful things about them. Scare him or no, you are one of us. And that means you get to bask in my adoration whenever it is directed at you. Unless it makes you feel uncomfortable, of course, he promised warmly, enjoying the way Virgil flushed. He was so cute! Okay, he said softly. Deciding that throwing his full charmed self at him right away would probably give his poor Stormcloud a heart attack, Roman nodded to the room. Disney movie night? As friends, of course. Not a date, he assured them, secretly wishing that Virgil wanted it to be a date too. Virgil smiled and nodded. Sounds good. Allowing himself to love Virgil freely was great. But a week turned into 2, turned into a month, and Roman's heart ached with longing he could not allow himself to cave to. But what if this was it? What if his feelings had cemented themselves and wouldn't fade this time? What if he did pursue something and his feelings faded right when Virgil got comfortable in their relationship? What if... Again, a knock on the door made him look up from his lovesick poetry. Woman, a word in the kitchen, Logan's voice called. I'll be right there, dear spectacular, he called back. He'd had crushes on Pat and Lo over the past month too, always coexisting with the persistent feelings for Virgil. Just that morning Logan had warned him of the hot tea kettle, which meant that he was crushing on Logan like a teenager and madly in love with Virgil at the moment. And that was not mentioning his long list of crushes on people from Thomas's surroundings. But he paid those no mind unless they were in direct interactions with them, especially if Thomas was interested too. Anyway, he fixed up his hair and headed down where he found Logan, Patton and Virgil sat around the table. He took his seat with a smile. Padre, Galaxy Brain, mi reo, he smiled softly with a sigh. Virgil looked so good in his new hoodie. Would he be really against it for Roman to try it on? Would Virgil mind trying on his vest in return? He'd look dashing, no doubt. Virgil stared in his back. Well, we've been talking, and we realized that you are holding a lot back for our sakes. And that doesn't seem fair to me, he said. Roman recognized his pushing through the nerves voice. He felt a shot of pride, but then the meaning of the word sank in. What do you mean? He asked, a bit nervous that he managed to upset his beloved. I mean, well, he became a lovely strawberry color and looked to the other two for help. Well, Virgil here came with a wonderful idea, Patton beamed, making Virgil even more flustered. Logan nodded. We have all discussed it at length today, and we all agreed, he informed Roman, before locking eyes with the other two, sharing a nod and collectively pushing forward 3 colored bracelets. Cyan, deep blue and purple. These are to show us who you are currently into. That way you don't have to make it a whole thing when a crush fades. We know when they'll start, but it's hard to tell when they end, Virgil explained. Roman nodded. That was useful. He put on the deep blue and the purple band with a fond smile and tucked away Patton's band with care. And on top of that, Virgil continued, looking at Logan pleadingly, we each considered what levels of intimacy and which types of affection we are comfortable with while engaged in a relationship with you, Logan said, leaving Roman confused. Not exactly how... Never mind, I'll try, Virgil sighed as he turned to him, though he didn't quite look at him. Listen, well, we all know how your heart works at this point, and we all care a lot about you, and we all want to at least try dating you if and when you are interested in that. The bracelets are more of a way for us to know if you are feeling romantic towards us or platonic. You'll have to have a talk with each of us one-on-one to discuss what we are comfortable with, since that is kinda personal, but we can see where it goes. With how intense your feelings don't usually fade for long. And if you have a situation like with the room thing again, well, where feelings stay for weeks, you don't have to feel so miserable, he explained. Roman couldn't believe his ears. So, you guys want me to date all 3 of you? He said. Not all the time, just whenever you feel romantically inclined. Consider it a queer, platonic, polyamorous arrangement, but sometimes it isn't exactly platonic, Virgil explained in a hurry. Roman felt tears of relief well up. So, I get to dress fancy and take you guys on dates, and I can ask for cuddle time and kisses? He realized with relief. Well, that's what the talks about boundaries are for, buddy. Those boundaries might change over time as we get more comfortable. But if and when the people involved are comfortable with it, then yes, you can do all those things and whatever else you want to show affection, Pater nodded. Roman couldn't believe it. Was this for real? So, you wanna go on a date? Virgil asked. Roman let out a laugh that carried off all tension he'd been piling up for weeks. Nothing would make me happier, he smiled. It was an unique arrangement, and there were kinks and bugs in the system, but they worked it out, as you do in any relationship. And this relationship, Roman was willing to work hard for.